It was around 6 in the morning when I opened the door of my lonely house in the mountains to breathe the fresh air of the forest, full of the scent of pine and morning dew. I, Auden Brody, former journalist and now a novice writer, was not fully awake yet. I had just stepped outside wearing my worn-out flannel shirt and tattered boots, yawning and dreaming of a strong coffee to help me wake up and start another day in my self-chosen isolation in the middle of the wild nature. And then I froze. As if a jolt of electricity had struck me, because there, just a few steps away from me, was a huge black bear. Its presence seemed to fill all the space around me, making the air feel heavy and still. The animal didn't move, didn't growl, didn't show any signs of aggression. It simply remained on my porch, breathing heavily, with a trembling body, tangled fur, wet in some places as if it had just emerged from a turbulent river or a violent fight with some unknown enemy. What struck me the most were the bear's eyes, dark, moist, almost human, and it seemed as though they were crying. Tears were running down its face like from a broken faucet. Never in my life had I truly seen a wild animal cry, and the sight reached straight to my heart, making me forget all fear of this powerful creature that could have crushed my skull with a single swipe. Only then did I realize the bear was holding a small, lifeless cub in its mouth, its legs dangling, head tilted to one side, showing no signs of life, like a rag doll dropped by a careless child. In that moment, I realized it wasn't just a bear, it was a mother with a dying baby. I wanted to slam the door shut and grab the old rifle hanging on my kitchen wall, the natural reaction of anyone who finds a wild beast on their doorstep. But something in her behavior, in that silent maternal desperation, stopped me. It made me feel that this wasn't a threat, but a mother on the brink of a tragedy too deep for me to name. My heart was pounding so hard, it felt like it might explode in my chest. I slowly stepped back without taking my eyes off the bear. To my surprise, she followed me with careful steps and, with an almost human gentleness, placed her cub on the wooden porch floor. Then she stepped back, sat on her hind legs, and looked at me fixedly, without blinking, as if she were waiting for something I could not yet understand. Against all my survival instincts, against everything I had heard about bear attacks, against all the warnings from park rangers, I knelt down before the cub. It lay still, so small, no bigger than a medium-sized cocker spaniel, with protruding ribs and dried blood on one ear. And just when I was almost sure he was dead, his chest moved. Just a tiny motion, so small I might have missed it if I hadn't been watching so intently. I looked at the mother bear, who still watched me with that strange, conscious look of hope, and the words came out of my mouth before I could think. "I'll try, okay? I'll try to help him." The bear didn't move, as if she had understood every word I said. With my heart about to burst, I gently wrapped the trembling cub in my flannel shirt and slowly, without sudden movements, went back into the house. I expected a growl or an attack at any moment, but the bear remained seated in silence, as if she knew something IDN single quotes T. Inside. I placed the cub on the couch and hurried to gather anything that could help. Towels, a heating pad, water bottles, acting more from instinct than knowledge. I kept glancing through the window where the bear still sat, an unmoving shadow with eyes fixed on my home. The cub was cold to the touch, limp but not gone. I stood in the middle of my living room, holding this tiny, nearly lifeless creature, thinking, what the hell am I supposed to do now? And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just a strange encounter with a wild animal, not just a bizarre twist of fate. It was something more, something that had chosen me. Despite all laws of nature and common sense, I wasn't prepared for this responsibility at all, but it seemed the mother bear was. She had chosen to trust me, and she waited calmly at the edge of my property, watching my house all day while I tried to save her cub, who, apparently, refused to leave this world without a fight. The cub lay on my sofa between towels, motionless and cold. I knelt down, carefully pressed his ribs with 2 fingers to try and feel a pulse, or see if he was breathing. Feeling nothing for sure, I held my breath and leaned in close enough to smell the earthy forest scent of his damp fur mixed with the metallic odor of blood and just then, I felt it. The slight rise and fall of his chest, a weak but real breath that made me exhale in relief. You're alive, little one. You're still here with us. I wrapped the cub in my flannel shirt and rushed to the back room where I found an old heater. I plugged it in, turned it to full power, and spread out every soft item I could find. Blankets, towels, pillows to build a sort of warm nest for my tiny patient. He was breathing shallowly, barely moving his chest, and one of his hind legs looked oddly stiff, as if broken or paralyzed. Around one ear, dry blood had formed a dark crust, and it was clear this wasn't just exhaustion or weakness. Something serious had happened. Outside, I heard scratching. Looking out the window, I saw the mother bear still sitting like an ancient statue, patiently watching the house where her cub lay. I grabbed the phone and called Rachel Kowalski, the closest vet I knew, although she usually cared for farm animals. Rachel, it's Auden. I have a bear cub at home. He's badly hurt. The mother brought him and left him on my porch. She's still outside waiting. There was a long pause full of doubt before Rachel finally said, Auden, are you sure you haven't been drinking? No, I'm completely serious, and I don't have time to explain. What do I do to keep him alive? After another pause, she sighed and began giving me clear instructions. Keep him warm. Check for open bleeding. Don't give solid food, just liquids you can make. A mix of honey and warm water and feed it drop by drop. I'll call Ginny. She used to work at a wildlife rehab center. Hold on, we'll come soon. I hung up and went to the kitchen, where I found an old bottle of raw honey. I mixed it with warm water using a syringe, closest thing to a dropper I had. I carefully opened the cub's mouth and let a few drops of liquid fall in. At first, there was no reaction, but after several tries, his tiny tongue moved slightly. A wave of hope surged in me. That's it. Come on, little fighter. Stay with me. I sat beside him for probably more than an hour talking, humming, sometimes cursing quietly out of helplessness, all while the mother bear remained completely still outside. When I cracked the door open a little, she lifted her head, looked me in the eyes, then lowered it again. That simple movement showed such unexpected trust that I still remember it, and wonder how a wild animal managed to overcome her fear of a human. By midday, the cub moved his paw for the first time, just a bit, lazily, as if testing whether his muscles still worked. I laughed with relief, not realizing tears were streaming down my cheeks. You're not dying today, little one. Not on my watch, I whispered to him, though deep inside I felt panic, fully aware I was just a writer with a handful of towels and a heater, trying to save a wild animal I knew nothing about. By midday, my living room looked like a chaotic animal clinic. Blankets everywhere, towels piled up, the heater blasting at full power. The cub lay wrapped like a newborn, one little paw sticking out. The wound on his leg had started bleeding. Again, looking closer, it appeared to be a bite, swollen, red, clearly infected, something that could kill him faster than the cold or exhaustion. Grabbed hydrogen peroxide, the kind I use for my own cuts, soaked a cloth in it and gently pressed it on the wound. The cub shuddered. And strangely, that gave me comfort. Pain meant he was still fighting, that his nervous system was still working. The mother bear hadn't moved a single inch, still sitting, but her eyes followed every movement, every shadow inside my house. I opened the door a little and whispered, "He's still with us." "Barely, but he's holding on." Of course. She didn't reply. She didn't growl. She just took a deep breath, as if she understood what I meant. I returned inside and sat by the cub. Gave him more honey water. This time, he flicked his little tongue more clearly, trying to lick the sweet liquid. A small but definite sign of progress. My phone rang. It was Rachel again. "Ginny says you're crazy, but she's bringing meds. She'd be there in a couple hours. Thank God, I said quickly. His leg is bleeding. It looks like a bite. I think he has a fever. Keep him warm. No sudden moves. Keep giving fluids. For God's sake, don't open that door wide. Mama Bear won't stay calm forever. Rachel warned me, and I knew she was right. It was already a miracle that the Mama Bear hadn't torn down the walls of my house to get to her baby, but for some reason, she trusted me, and that fact made me even more nervous. An hour passed. Then another. The cub began moving more, trying to roll over, and I whispered softly, "Easy there, buddy. Not yet. Rest." Then he made a strange sound, not quite a growl, not quite a whimper, something in between, like a broken toy slowly coming back to life. I cleaned his paw again gently. The bleeding was slowing. The wound was still red and swollen, but it no longer looked as dangerous, and that was something I could work with. Outside, the mother bear began to show signs of concern. For the first time, she paced a few steps back and forth, as if her body couldn't decide whether to stay or leave, and then she returned to her original spot. I lit the wood stove to warm the house even more, though it was already sweltering for me. But the cub needed the heat more than I did. As dusk fell and shadows stretched long, a small miracle occurred. The cub opened one eye, just one, and looked at me. In that gaze, there was no wildness, no fear, only awareness. As if he was truly seeing me and somehow understood who I was. "You're not alone anymore, little one," I whispered, feeling a strange warmth inside me that had nothing to do with the heater. He blinked and fell asleep. Again. But for the first time all day, I felt like he might make it. Not a guarantee. Not a promise. Just a chance. A chance I hadn't had that morning. When Rachel and Ginny, the wildlife specialist, finally arrived. The sun was already setting. The mother bear had retreated to the forest shadows, but she hadn't gone far. She still watched the house from a safe distance. "My God, you weren't joking." Rachel gasped when she saw the cub, and Ginny immediately got to work, examining the tiny bear with professional focus. "It's a bite from an adult male," she said after a careful inspection. "Sometimes male bears kill cubs to bring the female back into heat. This little guy was lucky his mother saved him and brought him to you. It's incredible that she chose a human. Maybe she'd been watching you before doing something so desperate." That thought made me shiver, imagining that a wild animal might have been observing me, judging me, before trusting me with what mattered most to her. Ginny and Rachel spent several hours treating the wounds, giving antibiotics, rehydrating the cub's tiny body. When they left, the cub was breathing easier and had his leg professionally bandaged. "We'll leave you with meds and instructions," Ginny said as she packed up. "But when he starts getting better, you'll have to return him to the wild. He can't stay with you forever, Auden." I nodded, though deep down, I already felt how attached I was becoming to that small creature who had fought for his life in front of me. Over the next 2 weeks, the cub recovered surprisingly fast. His wounds healed, his appetite returned, and he began showing curiosity about the world around him, exploring my house with growing confidence. I named him Baster because it felt right. Even though I knew I shouldn't name a wild animal, I knew I shouldn't get attached to someone who would soon have to return to where he belonged. A free bear in the Durand woods. The mother bear kept coming back every day. Sometimes she came close to the house, but most of the time, she kept her distance, always alert, always watching. I left food for her, which she sometimes accepted and sometimes ignored, as if she didn't want to rely on human help any more than absolutely necessary. One day, just as Baster was confidently moving around the house, playing and even trying to climb the furniture, I got an unexpected visit from the sheriff's deputy. "Auden, I heard you have a bear cub living with you, and that his mother has basically moved onto your property," she said bluntly, standing in the exact spot where, 2 weeks earlier, the mama bear had stood with her cub in her mouth. I didn't try to deny it. I told her the whole story. She listened with her arms crossed and a concerned face. When I finished, she simply said, "You're lucky no one's been hurt, but this is a problem. Auden Wildlife Services already knows. They're planning to come in 3 days to take the cub and maybe relocate the mother. I can delay them a bit, but it's your decision. You need to do something." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept watching Baxter, curled up in his blanket nest, so warm, so safe, and so wrong for a wild animal. I knew I couldn't keep him here forever. Couldn't raise him like a pet. I couldn't steal his chance to become what he was born to be, a free bear in the forest. By morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for Wildlife Services. I wasn't going to wait for the mother bear to work up the courage to come get him. I gently placed Baxter in a large container lined with his familiar blankets, added his favorite toy, a worn tennis ball, and gave him some food for the journey. Then I loaded him into my truck and drove deep into the forest, to a spot I hoped was near the mother's den. I drove slowly down the woodland trails, watching carefully for signs of bear activity. Eventually, I came to a small clearing surrounded by thick fir trees. I stopped the truck, got out, opened the container. Baxter blinked at the bright light, sniffing the familiar smells of the forest. "This is your real home, little one," I said, my throat tight. I stepped back, giving him space. He took a few hesitant steps, then stopped and looked at me as if wondering why we were here, what was happening. And then we both heard it, the crack of branches from the edge of the clearing. The mother bear was watching us. She looked cautious, but not angry. Our eyes met, and in hers, I saw again the strange awareness I'd seen that first day. I stepped back slowly, showing her I meant no harm, showing her I was letting go, returning her cub to the world he belonged to. Baxter stood still, looking at me, then at his mother, as if torn between two worlds, trust and instinct, human warmth and nature's call. The mama bear made a soft sound, half growl, half purr, and Baxter turned toward her. He took a few wobbly steps, paused, then a few more. My heart was breaking as I watched the distance between them shrink, as motherly love reunited two beings once torn apart by cruelty and chance. Just when they were almost nose to nose, Baxter suddenly turned and ran back to me, pressing his little face into my knees as if saying goodbye. Or maybe thank you. I'll never know for sure. I knelt down and let myself, just once more, stroke his soft fur, whispering words he couldn't understand, but maybe could feel. "Go. Live your life, brave little one. You'll be okay." Then I gently nudged him toward his mother, and this time, he didn't hesitate. With little hops, he reached her. She sniffed him all over, checking that he was really okay, really her cub, alive and safe. And then something happened that I didn't expect. The mother bear lifted her head and looked straight at me. And to my astonishment, she gave a small nod. Then turned and walked slowly into the forest, guiding her cub, who looked back only once before vanishing forever into the trees. I stood in that clearing for a long time, feeling a strange mix of sadness and peace, of loss and rightness, as if I had closed the final chapter of a book I never meant to write, but that had changed me forever. I returned to my now empty house, which suddenly felt too quiet, too spacious. Without the little brown tornado turning everything upside down, I gathered up the blankets, toys, bowls, every trace of Baxter's stay, and packed them into a box I placed in the attic, knowing I wouldn't need them again, but unable to throw them away either. Months passed. I returned to my usual life, writing my book, walking in the woods, enjoying the silence. But sometimes, especially at dusk, I would step onto the porch with a cup of tea and look toward the edge of the forest, knowing that somewhere among the trees lived a cub who had once slept on my couch and drunk honey from my hand. And then one autumn morning, I stepped outside and saw a small gift on the porch, a handful of ripe wild berries, carefully placed in a tiny pile. There was no one around, but I knew who had done it. I smiled and looked toward the woods where I thought I saw a flicker of shadow. Maybe just a trick of the light. Or maybe the mother and her cub, once a part of my life, letting me know they were okay, that they remembered. Since then, every autumn, when the leaves begin to change color, I find little gifts on my porch. Berries, pine cones, once, even a beautiful stone, as if someone is still trying to say, we're still here. We remember. We're grateful. And it reminds me that sometimes the most important encounters in our lives happen without warning, and the deepest connections form in the moments we least expect. Now, as I write my book, I often think of that mother Beerwo entrusted me with, what she loved most, and of the cub who taught me that love sometimes means letting go. In a world where the line between wild and tame seems so clear, they reminded me that compassion knows no boundaries and that trust can grow in the most unexpected places, overcoming fear and prejudice. And when visitors ask about the little wooden bear on my shelf, I smile and say it's just a memory from Durin. But to me, it's something more, a reminder of those few weeks when my house became the refuge of a wild creature, and I became, if only for a while, the guardian of a life I was never meant to keep, only protect, before giving it back to its rightful owner, the endless forest and the mother who never stopped waiting. So friends, if you want more videos, please subscribe our channel. Thank you much for watching this video. Take care. Bye bye.